Hello, friends. For the longest time, I would say from the very first episode on this series of appreciation of North Indian music, I have been using a term called rag. We never went into the details to understand what rag is and how it is made. When we talked about pitch and melody, we talked about thought in detail, we talked about swar in detail, and I kept on throwing the names of various rag at you, but never explained what rag is all about. Well, now is the time, I think, to start discussion on rag. This can go on forever as there are hundreds of thousands of rag in existence. But let us talk about the most popular ones. But first, let us get familiarized with the system of rag over next few episodes. Before we talk about what rag is, let me talk about the misconceptions or misunderstanding that many people have about rag. Let me tell you what rag is not. Rag is not a mode, rag is not a scale. One of the questions that I have always been asked by Westerners is, so you sing what? Raga music? My answer to them is yes and no. Raga, to begin with, is not the right pronunciation, it is rag. What is raga music? What is rag music? Anyways, it'll take a few episodes for me to explain what rag is and to explain to them whether I sing rag music or I don't sing rag music. So let's begin. Rag is one of the most difficult terms to define. So let us start with the literal meaning of the word rag. It is a Sanskrit word. Rag comes from the root word reg, R-E-G, which means to dye, D-Y-E, or to color. Similar words are found in many languages like Greek, Persian, and some other languages such as rakta, to color, to tint. That is what basically it means. The term rag mostly refers to the colors or the tint or rakta or ranga of human emotions, human feelings like affection, desire, interest, joy, delight, and many other human emotions. The term is found in old texts like Upanishad, Gita, and even in the texts of Buddhism, where it is described as colors of sensuality, passion, and desire. Bharat Muni, the sage, describes the creation of a combination of tones using mathematical concepts of successive permutations in his book called Natya Shastra. Bharat Muni goes on to discuss the rag, namely Bhairav, Kaushika, Hindola, Deepaka, and Sri Rag, and its effects on human mind. In Hindu tradition, the rag are believed to have natural existence. Artists do not invent them, they only discover them. If you hear a new rag, a true musician will always say that he or she discovered that rag. They will never say that they invented that rag. Some of the ancient texts, such as Samved from about 1000 to 2000 BCE, are full of various modes, harmonies, and melodic themes. And in these texts, rag were envisioned by Hindus as manifestation of the divine. A musical note was treated as god or goddesses with very complex personalities. And we talked about it in our previous episodes, right? So this is why music is very, very sacred to Hindus. This is why the classical music of India, both north and south, are very spiritual and meditative. It is very, very meditative to all Indians. Coming to 8th century. In the 8th century, Matang Muni describes rag as a combination of tones which pleases the minds of the people. 13th century text Sangeet Ratnakar by Sarangi mentions and discusses about 253 different rags. This is considered to be the most complete and historic written work on the structure, on the technique, and the reasoning behind rag. Tradition of incorporating rag is also found in Sikhism and Jainism. The 6 scriptures, the texts are attached to a rag and sung according to the rule of that rag. During the Islamic period of the subcontinent, the mystical Islamic tradition of Sufism developed in India. These were devotional songs, and music was called Qawwali, which incorporated the elements of rag. So this is a long history of rag in short. Hope you understand how the term rag has evolved over the period of about 4,000 years. And that is one of the reasons why it is very difficult to explain. Well, friends, we did not talk about the last 200 years where European scholars tried to define the term rag while they were ruling India. Let us talk briefly about that part of the history. Europeans define rag as a set of melodic rule that musicians work with. Not good enough. Then in 1784, 2 scholars translated it as a mode. Mode is more like a tartu, not like rag in any way. So move forward in 1834, which is 60 years later, another scholar named Willard stated that a rag is both mode and tune. 100 years later, a professor of music, Jose Luis Marines, refined his definition as follows. The rag is more fixed than the mode, less fixed than the melody, beyond mode and short of melody. It is richer both than a given mode or a melody. Wow, what a definition. Then somebody else came in and defined it as a mode with added specialties. They could not define what specialties were. Eventually, they all gave up until Walker Kaufman, an American philosopher and Princeton professor, stated that a definition of rag cannot be offered in 1 or 2 or 3 sentences. He stopped at that. And that's how we know that it is very difficult to define what rag is. Yes, he stopped at that because it's very difficult to define rag. It takes a lifetime to learn a rag, to find out what rag is. to understand how to sing that rag or play that rag properly. And by the time you learn, you find out that, oh, there is a lot missing there. There is a lot that we can still do. You start all over again. So in the next few episodes, we'll talk about all these properties that a rag has to have. Even the slightest change in these characteristics or properties changes the rag. What I mean is it becomes a different rag. Today, I will just go over the names of these characteristics or properties, and we'll take a deep dive in the next episodes. One of the properties that we already talked about is thought. A rag must belong to a thought. Could be the 10th thought that we talked about, or could be 36th thought, or could be 72 thought of South Indian system. A rag has a very well-defined time period when a particular rag can be performed. These days, the concerts are normally in the auditorium where electric lights can generate the effect of the day and night, morning or evening, afternoon or midnight. But still, certain rag sound good only in the morning and some appeal only in the evening. I have, as a matter of fact, experimented with this. Totally unfamiliar listeners of North Indian music recognize that a certain combination of notes gave them an impression of early dawn or early dusk. Some scholars think that the combination of frequencies that a certain rag generates has a direct effect on the circadian rhythm. You probably already know what circadian rhythms are, but just to explain to those who do not know, circadian rhythms are physical, mental, and behavioral changes that follow 24-hour cycle. These natural processes respond primarily to the light and dark and affect most living things. We sleep at night, we wake up in the morning. These are the rhythms. These are the rhythms that we follow. Next property or characteristic that rag has to have is it must belong to a jati. Jati defines the number of notes used in a rag. A rag must have at least 5 notes. Next, a rag has to have a well-defined vadi. Vadi means most important note, and a supporting note called samvadi or samvadi. Varjit the notes that must be omitted from either an ascending scale or descending scale. Aroha, avroha. Next, rag must be tonal. Atonal rag does not exist. What does that mean? That means rag must have sa, the root note. Without sa, there is no rag. Next, ma and pa, madhyam or pancham. They both can never be absent together. If pa is absent, then ma must be there. If ma is absent, then pa must be there. Next feature or property is ranjakta or ras. We talked about ras in previous episode a little bit. Ras has to do with aesthetic part of aesthetic values in music. It can be loosely defined as mood. Rag must sound beautiful. It generally has a predefined mood. The combination of swar creates a certain mood or ras. It is up to the artist to maintain that mood. We talked about Aru and Avro when we talked about omitted notes. So a rag must have aro, ascending notes, and an avro, descending notes. These are just a few. As I said, there are about 40 different characteristics or properties of a rag. These are just a few that we talked about. And now we will take each characteristic or each property and talk about them to explain the entire concept of classification system called rag. For demonstration, I have my daughter Surabhi singing a bandish or a composition that is made up of number of different rag. The ragmala is like a garland of rag. This composition is known as ragmala. Each line of the composition is made up of different rag. Please watch for the name on the screen. The name of the rag will appear on your screen. Thank you for listening to my daughter Surabhi. I hope you liked it. Ragmala is a great way to present different rag. Well, it's time for a song a day list. let us introduce you to various forms or genres of North Indian classical music. We will start with Rajasthani folk. Kesariya Balama Padharo Mare Des. Yes, it is a folk tune, but see how the singers can change folk music into something that sounds very classical. The freedom to improvise in North Indian music is just one of the characteristics of the North Indian classical music. This link demonstrates the versatility of Ustad Mehdi Hassan Khan Sahab singing Kesariya Balama Padharo Mare Des. Next, I have another folk, Ulajhi Sulajha Balama. It's what I call folk music gone classical. This time, the rendition is by Kaushiki Chakraborti. Number 3 is another folk music, but this time from Uttar Pradesh. It is called a Kajari gone classical. Ruchira Pandya performing a Kajari in Raga Mishra Tilak Kamod. Number 4 is a Dadara in Raga Pahadi by Ashwini Bhide-Deshpande. Mori Ataria pe Kaga Bole. Again, a folk tune gone classical. And now let us include a couple of instrumental pieces. First one is a Heer from Punjab. Heer literally means pure, but this musical piece is all about love story of Heer and Raja. I'm not going to go into the details of love story, as you can very easily find it if you Googled it. It is one of the most popular love stories of Punjab. To tell you something, between 1920 and 2009, 19 movies with the story of Heer Ranjha have been produced, and there are many more that were inspired by it. The song Heer has a fixed tune of 2 lines, repeating different lyrics. Listen to Ustad Sultan Khan Sahab on Sarangi. See how he takes these 2 lines of love, 2 lines of ishq, he describes it too. And how he takes just these 2 lines of the tune and presents variations each time he plays it. And finally, we come to Maharashtra. Sant Eknath. He was one of the pioneering philosopher, saint, and poet of Bhakti Yug of India. We'll have a series on Bhakti Yuga if all goes well. Sant Eknath's Abhanga, Majhe Pandhari, is performed by almost all Maharashtrians. Actually, I was told that if you don't know this Abhanga, then you are not a Maharashtrian. Just the way Punjabis think. If you don't know here, you're not Punjabi. So listen to this Abhang sung by various artists like Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, Pandit Anand Bhate, and many more. But today, the link that I am providing you is an instrumental performance of this Abhanga by Dr. N. Rajan. Dr. N. Rajan performing Majhe Pandhari on violin. Well, that's all, folks. That's all for this week. Let your week be full of music. I'll see you next week with another episode on Rag. We will start talking about one of the features or the characteristic that a Rag must have. Rasa. Te viola proxima semana. See you all next week.